Hello, BookTube. The other day, I created an original tag of my own so that I could poke my nose into your personal life. It's called 28 Random Questions Tag. And Olive did it, and Britta just recently did it, and it hasn't been exactly widely embraced, but I figure with tags, they're out there forever for anybody to find and decide to do. And you might think that if I got 28 nosy questions out into the world and got some answers, that I would be satisfied. But no, no, I'm not. So I've made another tag. This is the 28 yet more random questions tag. I thought we'd get right to it. Number one, what's the hottest temperature you've ever experienced? And for me, I know there are probably hotter places and hotter times of whatever, but I remember one week in particular in Algeria, the temperature, I stopped looking at it. I stopped asking people. I stopped talking about it at all. And the middle of the day breaks that people tended to take in the little town where I was just tended to get longer and longer and longer until people weren't moving at all during the day. Had to be 120 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm sure that it didn't go down below 100 degrees Fahrenheit at night. And it felt like another planet. Question number two is the obvious companion question. What's the coldest temperature that you've ever experienced? And for me, that would be in Yakutsk, in Russia. I was in extreme northern Yakutsk. And I remember, it was a long time ago, but I remember the temperature was just unbelievable. It got down to like, I wasn't really checking that. It had to have been negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. It's just unbelievable. The kind of cold where even a fully clothed human is in grave danger if they go out for even a minute. that sort of thing. Although, now that I think about it, with both hot and cold extremes, probably I've had access to temperatures every bit as hot and every bit as cold right here in the United States. But one way or another. I remember those two. Question number three. What's the fastest that you have ever moved without tech? So, no engines. And I think for me it's going to be a rather tame answer. I don't ski, which would be that would be the obvious choice here. But I have tobogganed. Quite a bit. I used to a long time ago. And I tobogganed once on a very, very steep hill in New Hampshire. And I was going pretty fast. By the bottom, I was going pretty fast. If anything had happened, if I had encountered a truck or anything, a stone wall, I would certainly have been killed. So I consider that to be pretty fast. Probably wasn't fast in real life. Question number four. What's the highest off the ground that you've been without tech? So, not a ski lift, not a plane ride. And for me, it would be the Statue of Liberty here in the United States. Is a famous landmark here in the United States. And once upon a time, a long time ago, tourists, you can climb up to the observation deck on the crown of Lady Liberty. You can climb up there. It's an enormous climb. Tourists are warned at every step of the way that if you're going to take the stairs, like your ancestors did, you have to be careful because it's a very strenuous thing to do. But once upon a time, a long time ago, you could also go up to the observation deck, which is around the base of the torch. And I don't think they let you do that anymore. I don't think it's considered sound. But I did that. And I think that is probably it, unless those of you can correct me. I'm not, now that I think about it, I'm not 100% sure that is higher off the ground than the observation room at the top of the Washington Monument, where I've also been. So one of those two, I think, would be it. Question number five. What is a trivial thing that annoys you? And there's a long list of these for me, but since it's on my mind right now, I will say something I mentioned on this channel before. Subway door blockers. Those of you who live in less developed areas where there are no subways, first of all, God bless you. The rest of us envy you as long as the day is. But you have the subway car, and it's going along, and it's making stop. And you would think that the normal mind frame would be that when you're standing in the subway car waiting for it to get to the next stop, the one place you don't stand is in the middle of the doorway that's opening and closing at every stop. And you'd be right. Normal people think that way, but there's a small group of people, you can count on it in any subway system in the world, who, even if the subway car is very crowded, so obviously there are a lot of people getting on and off at every stop, they will plant themselves in the middle of the doorway and expect people to edge around them, to sidle around them, or in more than one case, for me, in more than one city, expect people to go to a different door. I've actually had subway door blockers, when I walked right up to them, mutely point at another door. And otherwise telling me, this door is not open, so you have to go to another door to get off this train. They annoy me. They really annoy me. They annoy me more than they should. I know there are bigger pressing concerns in the world. But subway door blockers are a real annoyance. And I am not looking forward to the day, which of course will come. It comes for us all. We all get older. I won't be 28 forever. I don't look forward to the day when I can't do something about it. Right now, my response to subway door blockers is to blast straight into them. I don't sidle. I don't say excuse me. If you're standing in a doorway, you don't get an excuse me. I just walk straight at them at normal speed as if they weren't there. And so our bodies collide. Knees, stomachs, shoulders, chins. We just a full-blown body collision with a subway door blocker. That gives them the message. I've never had a subway door blocker get back in the doorway after I do that. I've never had one get back on the train after I do that. And I don't look forward to the day when I am going to look at a subway door blocker and say, well, physically, I'm not able to do that anymore. Because such people don't listen to anything else. They need to be knocked out of the doorway. They want you to beg and plead with them. But anyway, it's a trivial thing. It doesn't happen to me often because I'm not on the subway anywhere near as much as I used to be, thank God. Because, of course, those of you who know about subways, especially those of you in New York who probably are taking triple hazard psych pay, subways can be a nightmare. They don't run beautifully like they do in Japan, everywhere else in the world. But anyway, let's see here. Question number 6. If you could compare the novels of Margaret Atwood to one kind of lower intestinal disorder, what kind of lower intestinal disorder would you compare the novels of Margaret Atwood to? And for me, it's not full-blown gastroenteritis. It's more that queasy upset feeling that prevents you from being comfortable eating, but that never actually culminates in anything explosive that will then give you relief. It just sort of sticks with you, sometimes for days. That's the kind of lower intestinal disorder that I would compare the novels of Margaret Atwood to. Question number 7. Sasquatch? Loch Ness? UFOs? In your opinion, any chance at all of any of them? And for me, as you mentioned on this channel before, Sasquatch, I think there is a slight chance. It's not a good one. It's not anywhere near as good as Bigfoot enthusiasts say. But the very slightest claim, the very most modest version of Bigfoot is that there is a species of giant anthropoid living in the unsettled woodland areas of the world, the Pacific Northwest, the jungles of northern China, that sort of thing. That claim is not completely impossible, because there are examples of large anthropoids successfully hiding themselves in such circumstances until they're eventually discovered. The 2 new species of chimpanzee discovered just recently, comparatively speaking, that would fit the bill. The problem is that that's as far as you can go with Sasquatch. With any idea of Sasquatch or Bigfoot or the Yeti or anything like that, the farthest you can go is to say that it is theoretically borderline possible. Everything else is against it. There's no physical evidence. There are tons and tons of eyewitness accounts, but no bodies, no tracks, no scat that isn't easily identifiable as some other animal, no videos or film footage, despite the fact that there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people out in every aspect, in every inch of this creature's alleged habitat, all of them with cameras. So that tells against it, but at least I think it's theoretically possible. Loch Ness Monster? Absolutely not. Not possible in any way. The only way that people even remotely think that the Loch Ness monster is possible is because they're thinking it's one monster. One creature. Could one creature find enough food to live in Loch Ness? Okay, well, maybe. If, let's say, you take the number one candidate for Loch Ness monster, which is a plesiosaur, a dinosaur that has survived to the present day. Let's say you take the number one candidate, a plesiosaur. If you were to suddenly magically transport a plesiosaur into Loch Ness, it's possible, vaguely, that on a heavy diet of sturgeon and other fish, it might be able to live. It has the brain of a walnut. The brain is the size of a walnut in this creature that's the size of a city bus. So it could not possibly even conceive of a need to keep itself hidden from people. But the thing is, you are not talking about a Loch Ness monster. We're talking about a breeding population of Loch Ness monsters. We're talking about adults and little babies and adolescents, and we're talking about rogue groups and fights for dominance and all that kind of thing. And Loch Ness, the lake itself, does not have anywhere near enough food. The environs don't have anywhere near enough food to support a breeding population of plesiosaurs or any other large creature. And there's also the fact that's been pointed out by many cryptology debunkers over the past, which is that Loch Ness has frozen solid several times in recent geologic history. So there have been several times in recent geologic history, since the time when plesiosaurs existed, for instance, when nothing lived in Loch Ness, when nothing could have. So if you're a Loch Ness monster fan, you have to say that the monster's up and left, that they went somewhere else when there are no oral traditions of monsters anywhere nearby, or that they somehow hibernated along with the lake. It's ridiculous. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. There's no such thing. And UFOs, oh my. I think people think UFOs, they think Star Trek. They think a TV science fiction version of what interstellar travel is actually like. Interstellar travel is just mind-bogglingly hard to do. If you were going to do it, you would do it automated. You would send machines to do it. You certainly wouldn't send living beings across the reaches of interstellar space to another planet. And if you did, you wouldn't hide and conduct experiments on cows. It's an enormously prohibitive thing to do. It doesn't make any sense when you talk about the physics. So I don't believe that at all. And also all of the oral traditions of the UFO phenomenon are deeply suspect, deeply suspect. Unlike the case eyewitnesses for Loch Ness monster, nobody has really seen anything. Every once in a blue moon, among the hundreds and hundreds of eyewitness accounts, you'll get somebody who says they saw something on the road, but it's not something that could live, so they didn't see it. Bigfoot, there are tons and tons of eyewitnesses, and I think no offense to the people who collect casts of Bigfoot tracks, but I think with Sasquatch, the most compelling piece of anecdotal evidence is the eyewitness accounts. People from all over the world coming to hike in the Pacific Northwest, who might see a statue of a Bigfoot in the trading center before they go out on trails, but these are people, a lot of them, including plenty who do a lot of hiking in Russia and former Soviet satellite countries, who know what a bear is. They know what a bear looks like. And they don't know each other. And they don't know the literature. They don't know the whole story of Sasquatch. And they come back with very similar stories. Uncannily similar stories. So the eyewitness stuff might hold up. I might consider it a strong case. But with UFOs, oh my God, the more you probe, no pun intended, the more you probe the eyewitnesses, the more things just fall apart. So I don't think there's any chance of that. But I want to know what you think. Question number 8, are you traumatized by vomiting? There's an adult question here, although our one non-adult, Anthony Andrews, is probably thrown up. He probably doesn't like it. And I'm not saying that any of you like it, but some people I know, and have known in the past, have been absolutely traumatized by it. It's the worst thing in the world for them. And I'm not like that. And I wonder if that was maybe that I was raised and socialized by a species that doesn't really care all that much about vomiting. It's kind of a normal thing. But I'm curious about you. Some people I know who are perfectly normal. They don't have any other host of psychological problems, but they really, really hate vomiting. Not just because it's unpleasant, but more than that. And I'm wondering if that applies to you. Question number 9: if you suddenly had a big empty bookcase, how fast would you fill it? Not how fast could you fill it, but how fast would you fill it? What would you do with it? Would you just fill it with the next 100 books that you get, or would you use it as an opportunity to reorganize? Would you thematically organize it? Would you make some sort of resolution about its space? I'm curious to know. For me, when I managed to clear a large bookcase, I just did it about a month ago. Right here in this room, I cleared a large bookcase. And I told myself I'm going to leave it empty until I decide how to fill it. Some sort of idea how to fill it. And that didn't happen. Instead, I just gradually filled it up with books. So, so I look at it now and I'm disappointed, which means that sooner or later I will pull it apart and rearrange it according to theme. But I didn't do that while it was empty. And I'm curious about you. What do you, if you had a huge empty bookcase, what would you do? Would you undouble the books you have already, or would you leave it empty and wait for some scheme to come to mind? Question number 10. Have you ever been in a swamp? I have been. Yes. Many times, many different swamps, many different countries, including deep, deep into the Okefenokee Swamp, the Everglades here in the United States. It's my... what would I say? Yeah, you know, the desert chaparral covered in snakes, the actual desert dunes and whatnot, pretty much any biome that you could think of, I would have to say that a deep, genuine swamp is my least favorite. It's just an awful place to be. Just awful. Question number 11. Do you know how to bake? No, I don't. It takes way too much patience, I think, for me. Question number 12. Do you currently hate anybody? And by this, I mean the visceral emotion. I don't mean, oh, you know, there's a coworker of mine that I really don't want to share the break room table with or anything like that. I mean someone that you viscerally, personally hate, where deep in your heart, you wish for harm to befall them. And if it did, the story of that harm would make you happy. It was an ugly emotion, in other words, but nevertheless, we're friends here. So I want to know. That's the whole point of nosing into your life. For me, right now, there are 2 people whom I hate. But considering what my own emotional makeup is like, that's a fairly low number for me. So I consider that fairly healthy. Question number 13. Do you sing in the shower? I do. Religiously. When my surly houseboy is not here. I cannot know that anyone can hear me. If anyone can hear me, then I don't. But if I know that no one can hear me, then I do. I belt them out. And my favorite thing to sing, which is of course a corollary to this question, my favorite thing to sing, you might think it's Broadway show tunes, but it's not. It's actually bel canto opera. Huge chunks of bel canto opera. Question number 14. What's the greatest height from which you have fallen safely into water? And for me, I didn't feel safe at the time. There were some muscular teenagers that I knew who were on the University of Iowa diving team, and they have a practice facility with a diving board, you know, the different levels of diving, and they took me up to the top one. They said, "You got to experience this," and we got up to the top, and one by one they dived off and landed smooth as knives into the water, which felt like it was 10 stories below. And I dived off too, and I didn't belly flop or anything. I didn't make it. It wasn't a good dive, but I didn't hurt myself. And it was a surreal experience. I would never want to repeat it, but it was weird to have. Question number 15. Do you have any pet peeves? I keep a list. I annotate it. I update it. I currently am at 227 pet peeves. Question number 16. How many non-human species have kissed you? Which, of course, means licking in this case. I wouldn't recommend being kissed by a primate because they'd just as soon bite your cheek off. But I made a list. Dogs, of course. Pigs. I've been kissed by pigs and cows. And I think, in addition to cows, as a separate entry, I'm going to say yaks. I've been kissed by a yak. 2 different yaks. It's a life-changing experience. A cheetah. A domesticated cheetah that a friend of mine owned in Africa. Not a pleasant experience at all. Cheetahs' tongues are extremely rough, like pointy sandpaper. But she wanted to do it, and my host said, her feelings won't be hurt if you refuse, but it seemed like her feelings would be hurt if I refused, so I said yes. And the last one is a raccoon. I used to have a pair of friends who had a domesticated raccoon, and they told me, he won't scratch you, and he won't bite you, and he probably won't lick you either, because he's not much for licking. But that night, sure enough, he waddled over to where I was on the couch and licked me. They thought it was hilarious. Question number 17, are you passionate about politics? I used to be. I'm not anymore. I had a plan. I had a rock-solid plan that when Barack Obama served out his second term and left office, I would quit politics permanently. I would be a benign observer. I would watch the peccadillos of either side, but I would not care. And I thought that was going to be very hard to do. I briefly thought in early 2015, when the United States presidential election was really starting to move, like a lot of other people, I thought, well, it's pretty obvious that Hillary Clinton is going to be the next president, and staying emotionally uninvolved is going to be hard because she's incredibly inconsistent, incredibly corrupt, and never met a lie she wasn't happy telling, and is a governmental centrist only because that's what she's being paid to be. Just a garden variety, cornhusker, corrupt politician. I thought, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to stay uninvolved in that, but I will do it. And then the American political scene took a turn to the dystopian, to the macabre, in a way that I had not foreseen. Not in my wildest dreams had I foreseen. And that makes it much harder not to be passionate. I'm still trying. In fact, I'm trying harder now than I was. But this question also applies to non-Americans. So, question number 18. I asked in the last nosy question, say, what would your dream job be? And question number 18 is a variation on it. It's, what would your friends say your dream job is? And I've had more than one friend say that the thing they'd love to see me do is a call-in radio show as a radio host. With a voice like mine, I don't know what they're thinking, but the kind of show where people call in with comments, questions, where they want advice, that sort of thing. I've had more than one person, people who don't know each other, say that's the ideal thing they wish that I did. I don't know what that says about me, good or bad. Question number 19. Is your YouTube crush cuter than your BookTube crush? So we have this tiny little community of BookTube, and then there's the hugely wider YouTube community. I'm assuming you have a crush in both communities. Is the YouTube crush cuter than the BookTube crush? The odds are statistically hugely in favor of this being yes. BookTube is a very small community. YouTube is large. The larger YouTube is largely composed of people who are cute. That's one of the clubs in the bag that these people think they need in order to become YouTube rich. And so my answer is yes. my YouTube crushes are all cuter than my BookTube crushes. Question number 20. Have you ever been well and truly lost? I mean no GPS, no map, and also no idea where you are. Not, I think I'm keeping a mental map of the last 4 turns, but I mean no idea whatsoever where you are. And my answer is yes. I have been many times well and truly lost. Out hiking in the Canadian Yukon, in the American Northwest, in you name it, out with my dogs hiking with a bedroll, and that's it, where we just had no idea where we were at all. And I can attest, thing that you often hear, sometimes in inspirational quotes and whatnot, that you might never, if you've never been lost, you might never have experienced it, but I can attest that under certain circumstances, there actually is truth to the old saying that it's a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling to be completely lost, to be going in any direction and not really care, because you don't know where you're going. But that has happened to me many times. Yes. Question number 21: if you were handed $1,000, no strings attached, and you were forbidden to invest it, what would you spend it on? And for me, I think it would probably be a new MacBook. I'd just spend the whole $1,000 on a new MacBook. I have investigated recently buying older MacBooks, on Amazon, just typing in a maximum price and seeing what comes up for MacBooks. And it's amazing how good a machine you can get for $200 on Amazon. For what I use a MacBook for, word processing essentially, a very simple internet use, but not gaming, not multi-system gaming, no high graphics, nothing like that. What I use a MacBook for, I don't really need a $1,000 machine. The only reason that I would be tempted, the reason I would probably do it, is because the newer machines are faster. They work better. But if it weren't that, then it would probably be books, which would be a big mistake. Question number 22. What's your current YouTube guilty pleasure? And my answer to this is very similar to an answer that Caleb gave on one of these kinds of questions on his own channel. He mentioned out of the blue that he can't live without parrot channels. There's a whole bunch of channels he watches with people who have parrots and all the different personalities of the parrots. And my answer to this question is very similar to that. My sweet tooth, my guilty pleasure for YouTube watching is otters. Otter channels. People who have pet otters spend time with these creatures. And the reason it's a guilty pleasure is because I've met some of these animals in the real world. And river otters, especially river otters in India, or otters can get very big, is the point I'm trying to make. They can get enormous. Ocean-going otters, sea otters can get enormous. They can be as big as a person. And you wouldn't believe the strength of their choppers. Oh my. You might think, if you're crazy enough to be swimming well out past the tidal break, and you're well out past the land shelf of wherever it is you are, people go swimming in such places recreationally, and they wonder why they're bitten by sharks. They'll be bitten by a shark. They'll get a leg taken off. They'll be dragged onto the shore, and they'll be saying, "What did I do? What did I do?" But if you might think that if you're out like that, like on a kayak or on a canoe or a surfboard or something like that, and you come across a big sea otter, that it'll be all cute. Aren't they funny? They hold things on their tummy when they're upside down. If you've got one in a bad mood, you've got a dangerous animal to deal with. But so it's a guilty pleasure because I get to watch these things without any kind of danger myself. Question number 23. Have you ever been in a natural disaster? And yes, I have been. I have been. Tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, lightning storms, you name it, almost you name it, and I have been in it. And as I've said on this channel a couple of times before, in my opinion, by far the worst is a bad earthquake. There's nothing worse than that. If it's a flood, I guess it would be worse if you were caught without the ability to flee. I have faced a couple of floods, serious floods in my past, and I was able to flee. We had time enough to get out of the way. But an earthquake, there is no fleeing. It's just, there is no fleeing, and there's also no light at the end of the tunnel. You just effectively know you're going to die, and then you either die or you live. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say earthquakes are the worst, but I have been in many. Question number 24. Where do you get your news, if you do? So I want to know. I'll be horrified, of course, but I'll want to know how many of you don't look at the news at all, don't get any kind of news. But if you do get it, where do you get it from? Do you get it from snippets online? Do you get it from YouTube? Do you subscribe to newspapers? I do all of the above. I declared a moratorium on political news immediately after the 2016 presidential election. But I have been gradually moving off of that. The more I think about it, the more irresponsible it seems. Plus, I occasionally get paid to pay attention to the U.S. news cycle. So I have moved off that. I am gradually starting to readopt all of the old political magazines that I canceled. And I try to get a balance of everything. I make a point of, for instance, following alt-right trolls on Twitter. Specifically because from them I'm going to hear a completely different viewpoint. So if I see a Trump administration spokesman get on national television and mock a little girl with Down syndrome. I can watch the video with my own eyes. I can see exactly what was going on in his mind when he was talking. I can see the whole exchanges that happens in real live time, and I can say, what a monster. A complete monster. Only a monster would do such a thing. But I then want to read takes from people who saw that same thing live and had a completely different opinion of what it was. That, I think, is healthy. So I'm not saying that the alternative outside of my comfort bubble news sources inevitably sway my opinion. I form my opinions on my own. But I like a lot of in-streams from a lot of different places. But the days when I would just read the Boston Globe, those days are over. That there's too much corporate money in mainstream print newspapers. There's so much corporate money that mainstream print newspapers almost always have an ideological agenda, and they don't always trouble to tell you that. So you could be reading a story in the Washington Post or the New York Times and not even know, unless your guard is up, you won't even know that the story is fundamentally incomplete. It's another reason why I strongly suggest that you all subscribe to the Christian Science Monitor, one of my own reviewing homes, because I'm around these people, and they don't have anything like that. The only large, extremely terrifying, supernatural, otherworldly force that governs the content of the Christian Science Monitor is Mary Baker Eddy, you might as well be finding her in the hallways of the newspaper. She's that vital a presence. But nevertheless, the goal at the Monitor is not only to find intelligent, informed balance in all the news that they report, but also to find light, which I think is great, and which other news organizations don't feel compelled to do. The Monitor likes to find light in any story, even a glimmer of hope. They don't like to give you just a horrible, horrible story and leave it at that. They like to tell you something, even if it's tiny, that you can grab onto. And I like that. Cheesy as it is, I like that as a mission. And then question number 25, all the way to the end, a hideously long video. This is, what's the most unexpected good thing that you've discovered about making booktube videos? And for me, I got a lot of the expected things. I got lots and lots of book conversation, lots of cross recommendations, lots of opinions different from my own, lots of people saying, oh, your dismissal of that author is just silly. I've read that author and I love them. And, that's good. That's very good for me. That forces me to say, oh, wait a minute. So-and-so, whose channel I really likes this author that you've grown accustomed in the last 30 years to saying is garbage. Well, maybe that means that you should revisit this author, because you certainly can't call that person garbage. So maybe there's something wrong here. I love that. Absolutely love it. But I expected that. And I also expected the number one aspect of making booktube videos that everybody always talks about, which is community. You got all these people that you can find in your comments field, and they can find you in their comments field. But the thing that surprised me the most is the real world relationships that can spring from booktube. Where you start to make actual friendships that aren't just names and comments field anymore. They're actual people that you can do things with, talk about things with outside of booktube, completely unconnected with booktube, people that you wouldn't have met otherwise. That was unexpected to me, that would happen, much less that it would happen to the extent that it has. And I really like it. So if any of you out there who are watching this video and got all the way to the end here and have been thinking at all about making a booktube video of your own, a booktube channel, go ahead and do it. Take my word for it. Do it. Like I always say, if you don't like it, you can just stop and take down your videos, but I bet you'll like it. And that's it. That is the 25 yet more random book tag for questions for me nosing around in your personal life. And I want to tag all the usual suspects. I want to tag Juan at Just Ron Reader so I don't forget. I want to tag Britta, who just got underneath one of my tags. Now I'm giving her another one. Jennifer at Insert Literary Pun here, if you'll do it. Jess at Garden Scriptorium. Olive at a Book Olive. I would love to hear your answers, but also anybody who actually had the perseverance to get this far. I would love that. Feel free to answer all my nosy questions. And I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.